I am wondering, why are you
Okay.
here?
Welcome, Cantina Club denizens. Thanks for joining us. We are minus one Corellian trader this week. He's on his travels, as Corellians must occasionally do those smuggler run. But he is going to be back in a couple of weeks with us. And this week, Greedo and I are going to discuss
Guido?
the
So like he's a Guido. Hey,
Guido,
Guido.
Guido,
It's a Star Wars
Greedo.
celebration.
Guido is going to
I bring in the
discuss.
spicy meatball.
We're going to talk about the first two episodes of the second season of Star Wars Visions, which is the anthology animated series of animated shorts that's on Disney Plus. And the first season was released, I think, a couple of years ago. And that one was a season that was produced by various animation studios in Japan. And the second season goes global with various episodes produced by animation studios around the world. And correct me if I'm wrong about this. I think the premise behind the series is that it's non-canonical, that they're not bound, the animators are not bound by canon, that their episodes are basically inspired by the Star Wars universe. Is that correct?
You are wrong, but you
Uh-oh.
are not wrong about this. So that is correct.
Okay, I'm wrong about everything. I got one thing right.
Basically. No, but no, I'm just kidding. No, it is non-canonical. Yeah, just like Visions Series 1, it was loosey-goosey inspired by Star Wars, In
Yeah.
other words, everybody loves lightsabers.
Yeah, so they're not dealing with canonical characters or situations. They're
Right.
kind of free to make things within the Star Wars universe or inspired
Mhm.
by elements of the Star Wars universe. So it's become a really creative series, and I loved the first season of it. I've seen the first three episodes of the second season and really enjoyed each one. And like I said, we're going to talk this week about the first two episodes. And let me issue a spoiler alert right away because I don't think that there's any way that we can really do these episodes justice without talking about some important plot points, especially the second episode. And I'll go ahead and start out by saying that I thought it was a great choice that they begin the season with these two episodes back to back because they make a wonderful counterpoint to each other. They both deal with Sith apprentices. The first one deals with a former Sith apprentice who was trying to leave her apprenticeship behind, leave the Sith behind. And the second one deals with a Sith apprentice who is entering into her apprenticeship and embracing the way of the Sith. And I thought it was just really just two neat counterpoints for each other to start the series with. What's your overall feelings about the first couple of episodes, and then we can talk about them individually.
I thought they were a great watch. Very different animation styles, of course, and the first one felt more adult-oriented animation, and also had a really cool style to it, that I haven't really seen so much before. I'm
Yeah,
trying to think where I may have seen it before. Um,
kind of
very
abstract
conscious.
expressionist painting kind of
Yeah,
style.
yeah. The droid and everything was really cool. All the everything looks like it's composed of energy, which is kind of one of the themes of the short is
Mm,
that the energy is all interactional and everything. These characters can manipulate the energy inside their environment and everything, and from themselves out into the environment. And that animation style really reflected that well. It also was a little bit hard edged, which when you consider the point of view that they're going with, made sense
yeah,
because these are probably some characters that have done some bad things.
yeah.
From the way they present themselves, possibly some very bad things. And
Mhm.
so I love villains and I love the dark side. And I think any chance we get to see it treated with some kind of respect and seriousness, I'm all about it. And visually, the first episode was more the kind of thing that I'm more interested in. The second one was more traditional style, family friendly looking animation. but possibly had a more complete story to it.
Mm,
And I thought they were both excellent, though.
yeah. Me too. And why don't we start out with the first episode? It's called Sith. And it opens with a really neat droid. Later find out its name is E2. It looks kind of like a Jedi training remote that rolls around on the ground at first, and
Yeah,
then it
yeah.
sprouts little like spider legs or kind of like what are those droids that the the fighter droids in the prequel
In the
trilogy?
prequels,
Yeah,
yeah, the destroyer droids and stuff like
yeah,
that.
it's kind of like those. But
It
it's
rolls around in a ball and
obviously
then sprouts legs. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, but it's obviously a sweet-natured, empathetic droid. I thought it was a wonderful addition to Star Wars droids because I grew to love it. This is only a 15-minute film. And the moment when the droid gets torn apart by a Sith Lord, about 10 minutes into the film, my heart was broken. The droid won me over. And we open with this droid waking up. It's human,
Right.
and we later find out that she's a former Sith apprentice, and she's having a nightmare when the droid comes to wake her up. And when she awakens from her nightmare, she goes out into her home, and this is where we get the really cool animation style. It's like she has used the Force like a painter to paint her own world to live in, her own place. And when we look at the planet she lives on, later she actually goes outside the building that she's living in. The planet itself is bleak and barren, and she's pretty like just gray colors, without any much of any color. And she has used the Force to manipulate color inside her home to create her own kind of universe. And she's waking up on this day thinking that she's going to hopefully get the strength to complete her painting, as she says to the droid E2. And right before we get the title on the screen, her coffee or whatever it is that Star Wars people make in the morning is in her little coffee percolator. It boils over, and she uses the Force to grab the globules of coffee in the air and turn them into colorful paintballs. And she thinks that she's got control of them. She says, I got this. And then suddenly she begins to lose control. They transform into blobs of blackness that then takes over the screen. And we see the title Sith with this weird abstract expressionist splash of color behind it. And that kind of sets the tone, like you said, for the unusual animation style that dominates the episode. We later find as she goes out through her house to look at her painting, it's not just a world that she's created for herself that is colorful and beautiful, although it's dominated by bright colors. To get to the room that she's working on, she has to go through a dark tunnel that looks like she has created. And so she has to go through this dark tunnel where there are red leering eyes. And then finally she reaches her painting on the other side that she's working on. And while she's working on this new painting, she and E2 hear a warning beacon going off. It's a beacon outside her home. And they leave the home to go investigate it. And that's whenever the Sith Lord appears. We find that a Sith Lord has arrived, evidently destroyed that beacon. He has two henchmen with him, and the three of them have come there to take her back. She evidently was a Sith apprentice that went rogue and tried to leave her master, and her master tells her that she belongs with him, and she refuses to come. What what did you make of the arrival of the Sith and the conflict between her and the Sith master?
I just thought it was cool.
It wasn't it cool action
Yeah.
sequence? The action
I
was
didn't I didn't
wonderful.
make much more of it other than that the character designs were cool, the action was cool, the animation was cool. I did want to say just point out that the droid is important because to me because when you think about Star Wars there aren't many characters that have um droids with human characteristics. If they're paired with a droid like that, they're usually not all bad.
Yeah.
In fact, they're usually a somewhat sympathetic character. Now, there are some pretty bad ones, that have some droids with human characteristics. But when you think of the worst, like Darth Maul and guys like that who had the spy droids, the droids working for them are usually more insectile,
Yeah,
less don't really show personalities
yeah.
much, and are more threatening and obtuse to a person trying to read them. They're more like the dark side of technology. So the fact that she treated this droid well, and that the
And it
droid
treated
cares
her
about
well.
her.
Yeah.
Yeah, the droid cares about her, so shows us that she's a person worth caring about, in the Star Wars universe. And Andor, I thought that was a very good choice they made because Andor's character was so unsympathetic at the beginning, but the droid cared about
Yeah.
him, and he actually, you could tell, even though he treated the droid pretty bad, he treated everybody pretty bad. So he considered the droid to be almost an equal, and he recognized the droid's importance in taking care of his mom and all of that. Um, so I think they use that effectively here to show us, because they have such a short amount of time, that this person is already established relationship, and treats a class of characters that can be outcasts in the Star Wars universe, with enough respect to have a bond. Then this is a person that we can probably empathize with. So,
Yeah.
um, but as
So
far as
even
the
though she says that the black keeps wanting to enter the painting, when she starts to try to paint her special room again, and after going through the dark corridor and arriving in what looks like it's going to be a beautiful, colorful painting, and she puts her hand to the surface and black starts to ooze from her hand. So she says the black keeps wanting to enter it. She's dominated by the primary colors, and that also suggests a kind of warmth to her character from the very beginning. And the fact
Yes.
that the empathetic droid woke her from a dark dream, suggests just great hope for she's trying to be something completely different than the Sith background. I also love the use of color in the conflict with the Sith. I thought that was really cool because the planet she lives on, she seems like she lives there entirely alone except for E2, the droid. The planet is almost colorless. It's just this gray, barren landscape when she goes out to find out what destroyed the beacon. And then when the Sith arrive, is transformed to this fiery landscape that's dominated by reds and oranges, and when they chase her back to her home and they enter her home, it really got me when she's fighting the Sith Lord. She eliminates the henchman really quickly, but the Sith Lord follows her back into her home. And when he enters, they're using the iconic red versus blue colors, of the dark side versus the light side. But he's entering through a blue corridor and she's in the red corridor. It's like, it's kind of what reversing, our expectations.
Yeah.
And he eggs her into drawing her own lightsaber, and she has created her own lightsaber, a new lightsaber that is a yellow. It looks like a katana, kind of.
Yeah, I thought that design was really neat
Yeah,
because
that was a neat design.
it might turn some people off who are only looking for a certain thing from sabers. But I mean, we've already got the dark saber, which is basically like a cavalry, almost like a cavalry saber. Um, Definitely not a straight up, lightsaber. And now we've got this is like a short version of a katana almost.
Yeah,
And it's just cool. It's just badass
yeah.
and
Oh, and
fun.
the saber, the Sith Lord saber dragging along the floor multiple times with the
Yeah, that was
colorful
great.
sparks, and oh, that was this. The
Yeah.
color throughout was just so striking. And then he finally
It
eggs
also
her.
it also showed you this guy leaves a trail of destruction everywhere he
Yes,
goes. He doesn't care. Yeah.
yeah, and he tells her that her destiny is to be a Sith master, which means she has to kill him. So he's egging her on to kill him, and finally he gets her to draw her the second blade of her saber. It ends up being a double-bladed saber. There's a lower blade that's a red Sith blade, and she fights him and destroys him. But she tells him that before she tells him, she says, "I've chosen my own path. I've created my own path." And once he's destroyed, she leaves the planet with E2 saying, yes, they're going to come after us. They're going to send more, but we're going to go to a more welcoming planet. And she says, the one thing that my master said that was right is that I am the master now and I can paint my own destiny. And she flies out of there. And I like behind her on the side of the house she lived in, she's painted a fist raised in defiance, carrying the two-pronged saber with the Sith blade and the yellow blade on one side. Kind of like I think a defiance of the people that are going to come there looking for her later. It's a message
Right.
to them of what she's chosen. So I think that's cool. At one point, she mentions when she's fighting the Sith Lord that the darkness begins to enter the painting again when she's using colors against him, and she says there's both darkness and light, and that's when she decides to ignite the other half of her saber. So it was an interesting use of the dark side versus light side
Yeah,
iconography and
we're
of Star
seeing
Wars.
people giving themselves permission to use the darkness in themselves and accept it rather than Yoda's philosophy, which is once you start down the dark path, forever will it dominate your
Yeah,
destiny. Because if you start off as a Sith apprentice and you want to be something else, well, according to Yoda, you're done,
yeah,
right? I mean, you already started down the dark path. It's going to dominate your destiny. So you might as well stop. You might as well give up. But if you're stuck in that situation, you have to forge your own path. And I think that's the subtlety or the nuance of what this is about. And later in this Visions season, there's Journey to the Dark Head, which I think uh, kind of brings forward the same exact theme.
I'll
Go
look
there,
forward to
yeah.
that.
Um, yeah, and it's just a more nuanced approach that people have to if the force is internalized and it's a
Yeah,
reflection of yourself, then you have to accept the darkness within yourself. And in the original trilogy, Luke did the same thing. I think it just wasn't stated, but it was visually illustrated there for us to
yeah,
see. Vader was his bad side. Vader was the potential for Luke to be exactly like this girl, could end
yeah,
up being her Sith master. Everyone wants someone to take their place to carry on their legacy. They don't want to accept the fact that their legacy is being rejected because it's not worthy or whatever. And but yeah, I like the fact that there's some implications here that this Sith is her master's probably well accomplished, old,
mhm,
and the only thing left to do is to continually try
yeah,
himself against apprentices and say who's going to come take it, who wants it, and then what do you do when the person doesn't want it,
yeah,
but your whole philosophy, your whole religion, your whole way of being is about domination and control, so you don't let that person go,
yeah,
not on their terms. They don't get a choice. You didn't get a choice, so why are they going to get one? you know um it would have been cool if they could have somehow humanized him a little bit to show that maybe there had been more to the relationship at one point. Because I love the idea of dark relationships, mentoring and all that. They don't go into it enough in Star Wars. I know it wouldn't be the most popular thing. Like not everybody wants to see that, but I think the dark side a lot of times just gets saddled with being a murder cult. Just like
mm.
kill this person and you'll ascend to my side. Kill that person, your full powers will arrive. It's like, how many of these people have I got to kill? You know what I mean? We'll just keep killing and you'll become more and more powerful. Uh, and a lot of times that seems to be the only, use your hatred, and then the final step is commit cold-blooded murder, and you'll come into your full powers. And it's like, uh, can we get a little more, than that? Because only the most dedicated are going to find fulfillment through that. It's like there's got to be more to attract people, to seduce them. To like
Yeah.
I can balance power to get what I want. Not everybody wants to kill everyone. It's in their way. There's a lot of other paths to go. So anyway, yeah, I think we're both agreeing it was a good short, right?
Yeah. Excellent. I really enjoyed
If
it.
and we got to see again, there's Sabine in Rebels as an artist, and
Hmm.
here we got another character whose name I don't even remember from the short. Did
It
she have a
didn't
name?
give her name. Mm-mm.
Sith Apprentice, I guess, whatever you want to
Mm.
call her.
I think it
Um,
had a name in the credits, but I can't
okay.
remember what the name was.
Well, here's another artist, and I think that's interesting. Anytime they bring in, like in the last season, they brought in the musicians in Tatooine Rhapsody, and
Mm.
anytime they bring in people trying to do something that besides just moisture farming or being a soldier, for one side or the other, I think it's interesting and shows us that people have some other desires, that you can be creative in the Star Wars universe, try to express yourself. And but overall, I thought the theme was encapsulated in exactly what they wanted to say there, is that the more you struggle against the darkness in yourself, the greater its influence might become.
Yeah.
Whereas if you put it in its proper place and accept it and you use it properly, along with everything else that's in you, that it will it will be more under control, and that's something that artists express all the time. So,
Yeah.
um, but it's a little counter to our traditional Star Wars, Force
Yeah.
philosophy because, in Star Wars, the Force is a thing that exists beyond you. It is not just
Mhm.
about internalizing it inside you and reflecting yourself. It is actually the Force.
The
It is created
force.
by everything, and it has rules outside of you. So, while I don't necessarily see totally eye to eye with that, it was a cool, short for sure.
Yeah,
Good way
I
to start
agree.
season
Yeah.
2.
Yeah. And
Unique animation
that
style.
one was by El Gary Studios in Spain. And
Okay, that's
the
good to know. Yeah, I didn't
second,
know that.
yeah, each of them is by an animation studio in a different country. The second one, Screecher's Reach, is by Cartoon Saloon. It's an Irish animation studio.
Oh, okay, well, that makes sense
Yeah, that and
with
it's
the
based in the Irish folklore, the Banshee. It has a, I love this episode. And I have to say this is my favorite episode so far of all of the Visions episodes, including from
even from
season
season
one.
1?
Yeah, even from season one. This is my
Okay,
favorite.
cool, alright.
Part of it is because it's kind of like the Charles Dickens episode, you got the
Yeah.
little waifs, the orphan kids who are working in the workhouse, and they literally call it a workhouse. Um, and then they escape to go on their own adventure. But I liked the animation style you said was more conventional. It was. It's kind of evocative of the film that this studio was most famous for. Let's see, The Secret of Kells, the one about the Book of Kells. You know which one I'm talking about?
I think
Um,
so, yeah.
yeah, it's the film that shows the illuminated manuscript, medieval manuscript of the Book of Kells.
Oh, right, right,
And that
right,
was a
yeah.
beautifully animated film.
It was, yeah.
And this is kind of in that style. The thing I liked about the beginning, when they introduced the workhouse, we see the interior of it with all of these kids waking up, getting up, being forced out of their bunks, and then slaving away with all this machinery. And it looks, they deliberately evoke images from the silent sci-fi epic Metropolis, where the machinery looks like Moloch, or also, it was also called Mother in that film, the big machine that was underground, that all the working classes were forced to live underground and work this big machine so that it could run the metropolis. It was above ground where the elite classes lived. So visually, it's evoking other science fiction
That's a
images
good
of,
point. Yeah, that's
yeah, of
cool.
oppression and class difference and things like that. And one of the workers steps away. She's having a problem with her machinery, and she steps away and starts to take off the costume, she's protective gear that she's in, and we find that it's a child, a little girl named Doll, and she runs away from the factory workhouse, and a few of her friends, other children, join her. And they ask her, "Where are you going?" She says, I'm going to go to Screecher's Reach. I've had it. I'm going to go to Screecher's Reach. Like, why are you going to go there? Because that's a place that is notoriously haunted. And there is some kind of screeching ghost that lives there. And anyone who has seen this ghost never comes back alive. How they would know that, I don't know. But
Yeah,
anyone,
it begs the question, doesn't it?
yeah, anyone who's seen the ghost does not return alive. But they're thinking, oh, this would be a fun adventure. We escape from the workhouse. They steal some speeders so that they can ride out to Screecher's Reach, and then it gets really dark. The cave itself, it's the place is depicted as a dark cave, and the animation is really creepy at that point. It's an obvious throwback to the cave in Empire Strikes Back, because when they arrive, one of the kids says, "This is a bad place. This is a very bad place," or they
Yeah,
feel it.
the most little innocent kid says
Yeah,
that,
this is a
yeah.
very bad place. And the girl doll says, "Well, some bad places are supposed to test us." and
And
she,
does it, and she has an amulet or
yeah,
something, right?
yeah, she has an
That's
amulet, and what does she say? She says, she holds it and has a mantra that she says throughout the episode. I follow your path with strength and courage. I follow your path with strength and courage. And she holds this amulet as they're getting ready to go into the cave. And so we're getting a sense, it's kind of evoking a sense that this is a hero who's going to be tested, for entering into the cave. The mantra that the little girl gives
oh right,
sounds like a hero's mantra. So it seems like it's the hero going to undergo a test.
yeah, those of us with Star Wars background, there's some keywords there though
Yeah.
that that clue us in that.
And so they enter into the cave. They see the screeching ghost. It seems like it's a ghost at first. It rises up behind them and chases them, and its screeching starts to bring down the cave, and it separates the collapse separates Doll from her companions. She tells them to leave the cave without her. She refuses to go with them, and instead she's going to chase the banshee ghost. And so the other kids get out of the cave alive, and she's left inside, trapped with the banshee ghost. She keeps calling upon her amulet for strength and courage, and keeps saying, "This is all in my mind. This is all in my mind." Is because she's told her companions earlier that she thought ghosts were just something that were in your mind. And so she's
An
thinks,
internal conflict that she needs to
yeah,
overcome.
yeah,
Yeah.
and she thinks she can overcome this. And then, lo and behold, the banshee ignites a red lightsaber and cuts her. And then she knows it's not in her mind, it's something very real. And the banshee begins to screech again and to begin to bring down the top of the cave. And there is an opening in the cave that develops that would allow Doll to escape, possibly if she would just go through the opening. But when the smoke clears from the second cave collapse, she sees that the banshee is lying there, and it's an actual person that's trapped and injured, and trapped underneath the rocks that fell with the cave. And so she has a moment where the banshee starts to screech again, cave to rumble a third time, possibly could bring down everything on top of her, but she has the opportunity to escape through that opening in the cave. Instead, she takes the banshee's lightsaber and ignites it. And we cut away from her and we hear her swing the saber, and it's clear that she killed the banshee person. So that was the point where it really surprised me. That was
Me
the point
too.
where I knew I was watching something very different than what I thought I was watching.
Right, right. They set it up. They set this up as a kids' cartoon, even with all the companions and the kid with the lisp, the cute lisp, and everything, and lure you into thinking this is going to be, with the help of my companions and believing in
Yeah,
myself, I can overcome this internal fear, and reveal.
yeah,
I thought she was going to help the banshee
I did
creature when
too.
it came out. Like this is a person suffering. I can
Yeah,
show that there's a reason for this stuff and expose the humanity. And instead, um, and when she grabbed the weapon, she didn't look courageous.
yeah.
She
She
looked
looked
like she
frightened
was,
too.
yeah,
Yeah.
disgusted and frightened and trying to save herself,
Hmm.
which there's nothing wrong with that. But it becomes slightly more of a illustration of inheriting the power to defend yourself and to strike a blow against things that are trying to harm you and gaining strength and powering up and all that, rather than necessarily a Yoda type,
Yeah.
only what you take with you, type
Yeah.
of lesson where, hey, if you found violence, it's because there's violence inside yourself. And you need to resolve that before, to succeed. This was more like, I found violence and it helped me.
Yeah.
It saved me from a bad situation.
Yeah.
So, um, empowering message from one thing. I wanted to say also, in this short, I don't want to call them cartoons because I think that's disrespectful, even though I love cartoons. I don't think there's anything wrong with cartoons. But in this short animation, I like the use of color again. Completely different style than the first one. More almost like pastels or something, like soft on your eyes, more inviting world. Um, it's like almost like watercolors or something in a
Hmm.
lot of the backgrounds. The landscape, once they escape the factory or whatever, is inviting and kind of
Yeah.
warm blue screens. They have a
Until they get
campfire
to the
that's
cave.
orange. So they get to the cave, then it goes to dark
Mhm.
gray, then black, and then to this scarlet, not just red, but like a fiery scarlet. And this scarlet is symbolic of a lot of things in Star Wars and in this setting that they've put it in, which is very cool. And the fact that this scarlet is kind of eponymous or symbolic of the danger, and yet it is also what she seizes at the end to put an end to the danger to herself. um, I think says a lot.
Yeah.
And the amulet is revealed to be a source of this scarlet energy as well that she's been following. So this wasn't just about adventure. It was
Yeah.
about a type of energy that you are pursuing the call of, and how will you respond when you're confronted with this type of energy. um Very
And
interesting,
a voice comes
done
from the
visually.
amulet saying that this is as the amulet lights up with the scarlet light, that you've done well. Now it's time for us to meet. And we realize that this whole episode has been manipulated and created by someone outside of the story.
Mhm.
And this incredible ship arrives. The ship design was just, it was so cool. It looks kind of like a bird. It's very elegant with beautiful curves, but also really sharp, scary points. And but from the ship emerges, I guess the Sith Lord is what the implication is. It's a voiced by a woman, so it's interesting that we've got the little girl doll, we've got a banshee that looks like that's a in terms of Irish folklore, a female ghost, and then you've got a Sith uh, woman coming out of the ship and meeting Doll. And Doll's friends have met her outside the cave, and they immediately know that there's something wrong here. You know, who is that? What are you talking to? And she's talking to the amulet. You know, where did you get that? What are you doing? And then she has to make the choice whether to stay with her friends and go back to the workhouse, or whether to go with the Sith. And she tells her friends, she offered me a new life, a better life than this. And she asks if her friends can go with her, and the Sith Lord says no. This is for you, my apprentice, you alone. Make your
Very,
choice.
very harshly says no too.
Yeah,
As in, like, I almost expected her to say, "What friends?"
yeah.
and do away with
And
them.
then they're eliminated.
It's like, yeah, if you go back, you can't go back with them either, you know? But yeah, this was great. Great revelation for the end. And I wanted to say, I think it made me think about who was this banshee in the
Hmm.
cave. Was this a manifestation created by this Sith and brought from the fears of the local people, or was this a person?
So
Was this?
Doll was convinced it was a real person. She said that a couple of
Hmm.
different times. She was shocked by that. She's like, "This is not in my head. She was a real." In fact, she says she was a real person,
Right.
and that seems to really
And they
disturb
were
her.
they were fighting over the same saber. So there's implications here that this person that was female and was at the core of this red energy and black energy and everything, and was old, elder, like dried up, elderly, cursed, whatever. I just feel like this is
I
her
think that's
future she's
this.
looking at if she follows this path.
Yeah,
It could be the last apprentice or the last master that's been left there to be done away with by the new apprentice.
I'm even
Um,
wondering if it wasn't the master of the Sith who arrives in the
that's what I
ship.
mean. Yeah,
Yeah, and she
it's very
manipulated
possible.
her own apprentice to
Or
kill
her
her former
last
master.
apprentice who didn't make the cut,
Yeah,
and it ended up looking like drained of energy. Like the dark side
yeah,
can transform
yeah.
people if you don't control it, probably. And so this could be an apprentice that failed. It could be the old master that's been bereft of most power, except for the power of fear. If you can overcome that. And anyway, it was extremely dark message at
Yes.
the end of this.
That's why I loved
Extremely
it, truly.
unexpected. Oh yeah,
this is
yeah.
my favorite episode because I couldn't believe it had the guts to go there. And just wasn't what I expected. I thought,
No.
like you said, it was like a kids show. It was going to be neat and uplifting. Kids undergoing a test and then coming out
And
triumphant.
and
And
and and from a certain point of view, everything she did was heroic.
yeah,
She answered a call.
hmm
She went into a dark cave and she defeated a monster that potentially could have killed a lot of her people. Came out and was rewarded by this glorious light and an ascension to another destiny, to be a hero, to continue to thwart things like this wherever they find it. I mean, there's a way you could spin all this,
hmm
but we know, as do the innocent people there, that everything comes with a price, right?
yeah,
And the price is her innocence. She's basically committed murder because this creature was laying on the ground,
yeah.
crawling, and she struck her down. Um, wow, it's just really dark. It's really dark. It'd be a hard one to explain to your kids, I think.
Yeah, no,
If
I
you're
don't
watching
know
it.
that. Yeah, I don't know. I would watch that one with kids, but
But what a terrific backstory for a villain
a
or
Sith,
for a
yeah,
complex dark character.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Terrific backstory. And that's what I took it as, is like this is like an incomplete piece, but just shows you what could have happened throughout the many eons of
yeah, of
and
creating Sith.
I say it over and over again in our discussions. I love stories that are about um inheritance of power and the struggle over power and
Mm.
the transfer of power from one group or one person to the next, one generation to the next, whatever it might be. And
And this one
that's
was so tragic too because she did not come from a privileged position. She is somebody
no.
who wanted power because she had been so oppressed, and it's
And
just so,
also she was a leader. She led
yeah,
her friends followed her for a reason because she
yeah,
had their trust and everything. She was a good person.
yeah,
And this shows us the whole Star Wars theme of, you don't know anything of selfishness. Well, someone's going to teach you, you
yeah,
know, and evil isn't you aren't born evil. You aren't born knowing evil, really. Kids have just as much of a tendency, or innocent kids, to share as they do to take.
mm,
It's someone teaches you, and
yeah,
so it's what state you're in when you begin to be influenced and taught. Like, her friends were obviously a good influence, but she was from a horrible place.
yeah,
So in a horrible, unfair universe, taking that power in your hand and liberating yourself is probably the best thing you can do, but it's going to lead to consequences. There's
yeah,
like, you could continue to live amongst people who are relatively content to be exploited but still find some happiness in their lives, or you could follow this path of power and maybe end up like the Banshee, a cautionary tale, or
yeah,
you could end up as this glorious angelic figure that came out of the ship.
yeah,
um which that character didn't seem to have a whole lot of humanity either.
yeah.
So, but again, the scarlet was predominant in that character's
Mhm.
design, almost looking like a giant kind of bird-like figure, like
Yeah.
majestic. The cloak was almost like majestic wings, and then but it was a predator, no question about
hmm
it. But the golden light, I feel like, was, almost like a trick,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
um, but anyway, this is a great one because there's a devil's bargain being made here, which is another theme I love and you love as well.
Yeah.
Um, which every time you grasp for power, you are making a devil's bargain, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah.
And ignorance of the law is no defense, as they like to say.
Yeah.
So innocence will not protect you, which is the exact opposite of what most Disney messages are. They say
Yeah.
innocence will protect you. Not so much. That's what I liked about this one. This is one of my favorite ones so far. I think you said it was your
It's
favorite
my
one
favorite. Yeah.
out of all of them. I like
hmm
the Ninth Jedi still best because it left me wanting to see the exact, a show based on that. I want to see like
Yeah.
what happened next. And this is similar. I wouldn't mind seeing what happened next, but I took it as more of a one shot,
It was, yeah, it was
of
complete.
an
Yeah.
illustration of a backstory of how innocence can be lured by power. And um but then but you're seeing different stages of this because you see a person who's powerless but exhibits traits that someone invests in, which is what this happens in this episode. and they take them away and try to mold them probably and dominate them into what they want them to be. Then in the first episode, you saw one potential result of that, which is a person saying, you exposed me to power a long time ago. Well, now I'm going to use it for my
Yeah.
own means. I'm not going to just follow your path. But the trick is, in the Sith world, power is absolute. You have to have that power first, wherever you find it from. That's all they respect, and that's all they know. And so, interesting, right?
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. Very, not at all what I expected. Both episodes, excellent. I'm really looking forward to, like I said, I haven't seen the rest of season two except for the third episode, which I also really enjoyed. So I'm looking forward to watching the whole season now. And anything more about those
No,
episodes?
same for me. I thought they both delivered. Um, I think you have to approach Visions with a certain mindset, which
Yeah,
is, just enjoy it.
yeah,
It's artistic expression using Star Wars iconography, but it is not Star Wars iconography ultimately.
yeah.
It's
It's its own thing, and
through many
yeah,
different filters, and they aren't held to the same rules, and it's not canon. But Star Wars is out in the world. It's inspiring all different kinds of people. It has been for years and years. All of us, when we played with our action figures, we didn't worry whether our storylines were canonical or not. And so you give these artists the freedom to reflect all this back through their lens, and that's all you take it for. You
yeah,
don't sit there getting uptight about this or that, or whether it perfectly makes sense in the Star Wars universe. Um they've been given license to have license, to
yeah,
take like liberties.
yeah.
So if you can relax about that and just enjoy the art, I think we have a leg up because we love animation. But
Hmm.
most modern Star Wars fans at this point, um, have been through the animated Star Wars stuff, and um, have a respect for that. So I would just say it depends on. It's kind of like the Yoda thing. What you find, what you take with you. Just relax and enjoy it. It's not meant to be a serious like major movie offering or anything. It's meant to be part of just this enjoyment of the Star Wars heritage, and that's what I take it for.
Yeah.
And I think it's great. I hope they
Yeah,
continue
just
it.
fun experiments and celebration of Star Wars
Yeah, and I
iconography
would
and that's it.
absolutely pay to go to see a feature film of shorts of
I would
animation.
too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would too. It's
Um,
been wonderful so far. So I'm looking forward to the rest of this season. We're planning on covering some of the other episodes later in the podcast. So come back and see us again. Please let us know what you think if you've watched these episodes. Let us know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe, and we will see you next time, hopefully with the trader back in our midst. Thanks.
Peace.